Have you ever felt that something in your life was quietly off, a puzzle that made no sense, but you were too afraid, too confused, or too hurt to investigate? That feeling gnaws at you until the truth finally reveals itself. And the truth hits harder than anything you ever imagined.
Welcome, family. Thank you so much for joining us on Pet Aura Stories. Please take a quick second to like and share this video. It really helps us grow. Let us know where you're watching from. Your support means the world to us. Thank you again, and now, let's dive right in.
This is the story of Amara Okoye, a woman whose life had been shattered by betrayal, loss, and silence. After losing her child and watching her marriage crumble, she thought the worst had already happened. She thought she had seen the full measure of deception in her mother-in-law, Mrs. Ifeanyi Okoye, and her estranged husband, Kelechi Okoye. But sometimes, the darkness has layers we cannot see, and Amara was about to uncover a shocking secret that would shake the very foundations of everything she believed about her family. Amara had spent months rebuilding herself. She had moved into a quiet apartment in Surulere, Lagos, far from the memories of her shattered family. She had focused on work, climbing steadily in her career. Each promotion, each recognition, each milestone was a small act of rebellion against the life that once belittled her. She had learned to be cautious with trust, to measure every word, to protect herself from people who had proven capable of betrayal. Yet, even in her new life, she felt the weight of unanswered questions pressing on her chest. Why had her mother-in-law been so obsessed with control? Why had Kelechi allowed it to continue until everything collapsed? And most importantly, what had really happened that night her husband never returned? The first hint came in an unlikely way. A letter. It arrived unmarked, without a return address, slipped quietly under her apartment door. The envelope was thick, and the handwriting was unfamiliar but precise, almost clinical. Amara hesitated. She almost threw it away. Almost. Curiosity, that dangerous, necessary curiosity, won. She tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed neatly with dates, names, and events that made her stomach tighten. It was a record of interactions she had never been privy to. Conversations between her mother-in-law and someone Amara did not recognize. Notes about Kelechi, about Amara, about business deals, and about David. Her hands shook as she read. The paper revealed manipulation, planning, and deceit far beyond what she had imagined. Mrs. Ifeanyi had been carefully orchestrating events for years, not just within the family, but beyond it, into the neighborhood, into their social circles, into business and church. She had created situations to isolate Amara, control Kelechi, and monitor David. Every minor argument, every humiliation, every act of coldness was part of a pattern designed to maintain dominance. Amara felt anger rising, but she controlled it. She had learned through years of subtle abuse that rage without strategy was dangerous. Instead, she folded the letter, placed it carefully in her bag, and decided to investigate quietly. Her first step was the neighbors. She spoke to people who had known Kelechi and his mother for years. Some were hesitant, fearful of speaking out. But one elderly woman, Mama Ejiro, remembered small details. They were always controlling, Mama Ejiro said. Ifeanyi doesn't like it when people have their own minds. She watches, she plans. But people don't see it because she smiles too much in public. That confirmation, though unsettling, gave Amara courage. She knew she was not imagining things. She had survived real manipulation, and now she had evidence. Next, she tracked business interactions that her mother-in-law had influenced. She discovered emails, messages, and testimonies from former associates and friends. They revealed patterns of sabotage, small, insidious actions that slowly destroyed opportunities for Kelechi and subtly isolated Amara. Even the incident that led to Kelechi never returning home had a hidden context. Her mother-in-law had been warning and controlling him long before that night, and she had carefully manipulated situations to create fear and dependence. With each discovery, Amara felt a mixture of horror, grief, and determination. She realized that her suffering had been part of a long, orchestrated pattern. The truth was darker than anything she had imagined. But she also realized that she had survived. She had grown. She had built a life far stronger than what her mother-in-law had envisioned for her. Amara decided she needed proof. Something undeniable. She reached out to the authorities and independent investigators, carefully documenting everything. She gathered testimonies, messages, and financial records. She built a case not just for herself, but for anyone who might have been hurt by Mrs. Ifunanya's manipulations. It was during this process that Amara uncovered the most shocking revelation. Mrs. Ifunanya had been planning to take control of her own son's business dealings, framing Amara for mistakes, and isolating her completely. Every act of concern had been a calculated attempt to manipulate events in her favor. The realization was chilling. Her husband's disappearance had not been a spontaneous act of rage or accident. It had been the final consequence of a series of manipulations designed to remove anyone who might challenge her mother-in-law's authority. Amara didn't panic. She didn't collapse. She didn't scream. She had survived worse. Instead, she crafted a careful plan. She worked with the authorities, exposing Mrs. Ifunanya's hidden patterns, and made sure that every step was legally documented. She reached out to former friends and family members, quietly piecing together the network of influence her mother-in-law had wielded. The public fallout was swift and shocking. People who had once admired Mrs. Ifunanya's poise and control were confronted with evidence of decades of manipulation and sabotage. Her reputation collapsed. Long-standing social and church connections distanced themselves. Even Kelechi's friends and former business partners began to realize how deeply he had been influenced. Amara, however, did not seek revenge. She had learned that revenge could consume even the strongest person. Instead, she focused on rebuilding her life. Fully, finally, and unapologetically. She expanded her career, bought her own property, and strengthened the boundaries she had fought so hard to reclaim. Every new project, every new milestone, became a quiet victory over the years of manipulation. Her confidence was no longer fragile. It was a fortress. Months later, Amara received one last letter. This one was short. No explanations. No apologies. Just a simple statement. I see now what you were capable of. I underestimated you. I have lost everything. She smiled faintly. That was all she needed. Amara's journey was not about revenge. It was about survival, clarity, and reclaiming power that had been stolen from her. She had transformed pain into wisdom, fear into resilience, and betrayal into lessons about trust, boundaries, and personal strength. She often reflected on the question that had haunted her since David and Kelechi's disappearance. What would she have done if she had allowed anger and grief to control her? She now knew. Anger without strategy accomplishes nothing. Pain without reflection destroys the soul. Her mother-in-law had lost everything she had tried to control. Amara had gained everything she had fought to protect. Herself, her independence, and her life. Amara had become a woman who no longer allowed others to define her worth. She had learned to trust her instincts, document the truth, and stand firm in the face of manipulation. She had faced betrayal in its most calculated form, and she had survived. Now, as she sat in her Surulere apartment, looking out at the Lagos skyline, she understood the ultimate lesson. Some people cannot be changed, and some betrayals cannot be undone. But what can be controlled and what defines true strength is how you respond. Amara's response was simple. Live well. Build well. Protect herself. And never allow manipulation or control to define her future again. And so, the story ends, not with vengeance, but with a quiet, unshakable power. Amara Okoye had survived betrayal that would have broken most people. She had uncovered the hidden truths her mother-in-law had hoped would remain buried. And she had emerged stronger, wiser, and ready to face whatever life would bring next. Because in the end, survival is not about revenge. It's about reclaiming your life, your choices, and your dignity, and letting the consequences of others' actions speak louder than any words ever could.